Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if the Greco-Bachchan kingdom survived. You know what always fascinates me? To see some seemingly out of place kingdoms or countries or cultures, and they were actually able to hold out for a long time, much longer than anyone would have expected, and also have like a considerable influence in said region. I mean, let's be honest here, who would have thought that Greeks would one day influence places like Central Asia or even Western China or Persia and India especially? But yeah, that's what's actually what happened. It's not alternate history, this is real history. With the conquest of Alexander the Great, a Greek power reached for the first time the Indus Valley. And there was then, of course, a Greek presence in there. After the death of Alexander the Great, the generals they took power, and around 250 BC, Theodotus achieved independence from the Seleucid Empire, and from there on it just went downhill for the Seleucid Empire. While the Greco-Bachchan kingdom, who was seemingly cut off from the rest of the Hellenic world, well, they did well. And then also there was the rise of Parthia, and well, then came also a time where again the Seleucids, they could rise again for some short time. They tried to siege the capital of the Greco-Bachchan kingdom, Balkh, around 210 BC, but did so unsuccessfully, and the rulers of the Seleucid Empire thus had to recognize the independence of the Greco-Bachchan kingdom. It should be noted that the Greco-Bachchan kingdom had a huge influence on Indian art, Buddhism, Central Asian cultures, and also Indian cultures, especially about the arts of coin producing, and also very likely thus on trade. Well, let's take a look at the Maurya Empire, and in there they had many capitals. You know, the upper parts of the pillars, yes, this where you have like things like that, they are called capitals, so don't confuse it with the term of capital city. Yeah, and those had a very classical Greek design. And also what's very funny is that Ionian, which the Greeks themselves, they called themselves Ionian, later on it became so exchanged and transformed that the Indians, they had their own term to call those Greeks, Unova, or something very, very different, but still taking roots of Ionian. Just look at Buddha, for instance. Buddha statues, they took a very human form suddenly, and they could just be confused with any other Greek statue. Depictions also of Indian gods and goddesses, they suddenly changed a bit and had a more human form. And also if we are looking at, for instance, stone reliefs in India, we see they show Pharaohs with Greek clothes, the toga, and also they show the legend of Troya with the horse. Very fascinating thing indeed. Greek ambassadors, they resided in the Mauryan court, and in exchange to that, Buddhist missionaries, they were sent to places reaching apparently the Mediterranean. But the scripts that were actually indicating it, well, they were for a huge part lost. The Greco-Bachchan kingdom then decided to invade India. There are many speculations for it, ranging from pure expansionism to protection of the Mauryan ally, the protection of Buddhists being persecuted by the Shunga Empire, you name it. But what if all of that changed? What if the Greco-Bachchan kingdom survived? The best point of divergence one can take is that the Greco-Bachchan kingdom doesn't invade India, just takes some parts around their domain. This means that the Shunga Empire may have expanded a little bit more. It is said that, to some accounts especially, that the Buddhist persecution, which was counter to the Greco-Bachchan kingdom, was a very exaggerated or fabricated claim even. So let's just say that the Greco-Bactrian king Demetrius could just ignore those counts, and he would just say, nah, that's not true at all. Demetrius, as well as Menander, his successor, are claimed to be very great statesmen. And not only great statesmen, but they were also very great military strategists. It is thus possible that without an expansion into India, one of the kings or the following successors, well, they could have beaten usurpers like Eucratides. This means that we will have more stability in the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, and also that someone might have been able to unite all those kingdoms, because what I didn't mention before was we had many smaller Greco-Bactrian kingdoms, that aside. And with that, the Shungan invasion could easily be repelled, because if we are watching history, well, it's very unlikely that any force of India would be able to reach places into Central Asia or regions similar to Central Asia. And so the Greco-Bactrian kingdom would have no potential danger, especially coming from India. At the same time, the collapse of the Seleucid Empire would most likely be very inviting for great rulers such as Demetrius or Menander, and many parts of the Seleucid Empire could be conquered in an alliance with the Parthians. I am sure that the Greco-Bactrian kingdom would purposefully only take certain parts of the Seleucid Empire and also have later on a border with the much later Roman Empire. The Parthians, they could stay allied with the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, or they could attack them sometimes, but given the geopolitical ramifications, I don't think that the Parthians, they would be so stupid to do that. I mean, you have Rome on one side, you have nomadic tribes, and then you have another kingdom who has exactly the same problems as you. Well, you better work with that kingdom. What can happen next is that both empires or kingdoms, they could unite into a powerful Iranian Greco-Bactrian empire. This would be a very logical step, because, as I said, the geopolitical ramifications, they are the same. Both monarchies, they had policies of royal marriages, and why not just unite both kingdoms and empires? Because anyways, they used to be ruled from the same ruler, and it would be very, very likely that the same thing could have happened again. So instead of having a Seleucid Empire, we will suddenly have an Iranian Greco-Bactrian Empire. In terms of geography, this empire would be very similar to the Sassanid Empire. But culturally, it would of course be more Greek, more Buddhist, and more syncretization would happen. Buddhism for sure would have a real chance to spread even further into different parts of the world, such as Arabia, Anatolia, the Mediterranean, etc. It might well be greeted enthusiastically as another philosophical religion, along the lines of Platonism, Pythagoreanism, Stoicism, etc. In fact, Buddhism's focus on eliminating suffering is remarkably similar to Epicureanism's goal of aponia, which was rapidly becoming the most popular philosophy in the Hellenic society. We'd also likely have different types of literature and art which would survive into the present day, but it's hard to determine exactly which type of literature this would be. But much more of the Greek knowledge of ancient time, even Zoroastrian knowledge or Buddhist knowledge and so on, would be preserved or just be transported and brought into different areas of the world. With a bigger empire, no resources wasted in India, and a good ally with Parthia, or even an unification with the latter, the nomadic tribes could be integrated into some type of vassal state, or they could just be beaten. However, something like the Kushan Empire would not exist, and much of Indian history would thus very likely become different. It is possible that the Indians, they would remodel themselves a little bit along the lines of the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, or well, they could also just have internal issues, and we would see constant warfare between the Indian states. But well, sometimes maybe a empire like the Gupta Empire, but I don't think that any threat from India would arise. And with the caste system especially, this would also never become a true case that we would have a threat from India. Buddhism would spread, as I said before, and it is possible that Christianity could change a lot, or it would just be butterflied away. Which means that also Islam would be butterflied away. Much of Zoroastrianism would still exist due to the syncretization that happens, and more syncretization between Buddhism and Zoroastrianism would happen, and we could also probably see a lot of influence from Greek philosophers and would get something very interesting as a result. Maybe something along the line of Manichaeism might exist, or maybe not. Politically speaking, the world could not change that much for some time only. This new Iranian Greco-Bachchan empire could sometimes have wars with Rome, but nobody would really have the edge against the other one. Because if we are looking at the centers of both empires, well, the one empire would have centers more in the direction of Afghanistan, while Rome would then not be able to make a huge blow to this entity, and also then in reverse, the Iranian Greco-Bachchan Empire would most likely not be able to do a huge blow to Rome, because getting up until Constantinople would just pose too much of a threat, and then getting much until Egypt would also be difficult because of the terrain, because of the desert, because of supply lines, and so on. But maybe it could be possible, for once only and for a short time. It's also possible that Rome would not see them as a threat and also have some high respect for this empire due to this Greek heritage that exists. And in reverse, maybe this Iranian Greco-Bachchan Empire could see Rome in a very positive light as well, because of the fact how they would try to protect this Greek culture and also have done just peaceful exchange and good trade with each other. And yeah, later on also trade could flourish between China and India, and would you see something similar as in our timeline with the Silk Road. In terms of culture and language, I believe that Greek would have a chance to spread into India and even some parts of China. Greek would definitely gain a much bigger importance and probably be spoken in much of the old world, just like English, for instance, in our timeline. Only that it's of course spoken in the new world as well. This means that cultural, scientific, philosophical and technological exchange could happen a bit faster and alter not only Europe or the Roman sphere of influence, but also this Iranian Greco-Bachchan Empire, probably also India with the exception of societal changes, and China only to a smaller degree, because China was very much focused around itself. Buddhism would be the winner in this timeline. Not only would Buddhism have important things written down in Greek, but they would be supported by many rulers, be able to mix with local culture, not only have like a concurrence at all, but also have emperors really supporting this idea of Buddhism and have a very appealing philosophy. It is not far-fetched to believe that Buddhism could become the major religion in Europe, North Africa and even the Middle East, and of course Asia in general. Universities and philosophical centers in Greece, the Middle East, India, Central Asia, Egypt and again China to some extent, they would flourish and the world could be a bit more advanced. As with every empire, eventually a downfall would happen. Would the Scythians be the downfall to this empire? Would Rome never have problems and suddenly have some luck beating the Greco-Bachchan Empire or Iranian Greco-Bachchan Empire? Or would the Huns do some damage and then the Arabs as well? And then with the Mongols, well, they would totally destroy all the remnants of it? That's hard to predict. But one thing is for sure, if this Greco-Bachchan kingdom would survive and become even an empire, their influence would most likely be felt by the spread of Greek and Buddhism. And that's where we leave it for now. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.